Alright, what's going on, guys? If 2023 has taught us anything as fans of the Souls-like genre, it's that Souls-like games are finally at a point where they're actually really good. Instead of feeling like they're copying from software's homework, many new additions to this subcategory of games are reaching players that aren't even familiar with From Software's catalog, and a handful even being nominated as Game of the Year, which is a massive step forward in this direction. So today I want to look to the next year and cover 5 new Souls-likes coming out in 2024, because it's looking like this year is going to be just as good if not better than 2023. But first, let's specify what exactly is a Souls-like. In order for a game to be considered a Souls-like, it needs to be an action RPG in the third person with pinpoint responsive combat, big and challenging boss fights with a focus on positioning, dodging as a means of avoiding damage, and a notoriously hard difficulty. Now, the world structure typically follows a Metroidvania style in the 3D, but new innovations are always happening in the formula, so I think it's safe to say that as long as a game nails a few of these points together, then it can generally be considered a Souls-like. So for the purposes of today's list, I'm going to be sharing games that are either being marketed as a Souls-like or widely being discussed in that realm by widespread perception. The problem is, when it comes to coverage of games and calling them Souls-likes, the line between hack and slash and a game that plays legitimately like Dark Souls is so thin that it's almost impossible to know for sure until the game releases. So just bear with me today, but you'll see what I mean. Now, this list is in no particular order, but I want to start off with a game that really caught my attention at the Game Awards this year. The first Berserker Khazan is a hardcore action RPG being developed by Nexon Studio. The story continues their DNF universe that was established in their previous games, but in this one you play as Khazan, the ancestor of all the Slayers and general of the Pelos Empire. And as you journey to reclaim your glory and honor, employing various weapons, armor, and skills, all in the name of taking revenge. This game looks really cool, and it looks very polished as well. But when it comes to Souls-like aspects, the combat's there, the boss fights are there, and the RPG elements are there, all of which look like they're done fantastically. With that being said though, from what I've read in articles about this game, it does appear to have a mission-based level structure, which I know knocks off a few points for some people. Personally, it's not a deal breaker for me, and I will definitely be keeping my eye on more for this game, because the gameplay trailer looked fantastic. Now, there isn't a release date yet, but simply based on how refined and smooth the gameplay looks, and the studio labeling the game as coming soon, I think it could be a safe bet to assume that it's coming in 2024. And I sure hope it does, because I really want to play this game. So that is the first Berserker Khazan. Next up is Rise of the Ronin, which is the latest installment from Team Ninja, who made the Nioh games, which are highly regarded as some of the best Souls-likes. Rise of the Ronin will take you on an open world adventure through 19th century Japan, and the story of this game is said to be very choice-based, where you play as a nameless Ronin, forging your own path through the world. Now, this game looks like a ton of fun. There are a lot of creative elements here with the combat and the exploration alike, so much so that the game almost doesn't look or feel like a Souls-like in my opinion. However, the vast majority of the reception is describing the game as a Souls-like, but I don't believe it's being marketed as one. From what I can tell, the moment-to-moment combat is going to feel a lot more close to Ghost of Tsushima, but with your big boss fights that look like they're out of Sekiro. So while this one may be the least Souls-like on the list, it is coming from a studio that is very experienced in Souls-likes and knows how to implement that satisfying combat to the point where it'll likely scratch that itch that you're looking for, even if it's not following the formula to a T. Personally, I'd like to see more of the boss fights before I'm sold on it, but I will be definitely keeping my eye on this game and looking forward to reading the reviews whenever it comes out. Phantom Blade Zero is one of those games that when you see the trailer, it almost looks too good to be true. This game is being produced by the Chinese studio S-Game and promises a full-throttle action RPG with many Souls-like elements, with heavy inspiration from Sekiro, where you play as Soul, an elite assassin fighting against the enemy known as the Order. Now, the vibe of this game looks incredible. You've got this theme of Chinese folklore mixed with a steampunk kung fu style backdrop, and that's reflected very much in the combat, which, if I'm being honest, almost looks impossible to play. There's so much happening with the characters moving in the moment-to-moment combat that I can't tell if it's scripted or if it's actually going to be that good. This is a game where I really need to see some uninterrupted combat gameplay, because again, it looks too good to be true. Now, the game is scheduled to release in 2024, so we should see something like that pretty soon, but what I really like about it are the boss fights. The designs look really cool, they've got that Souls intimidation, we're just gonna have to see how they play. But again, that is Phantom Blade Zero. Stellar Blade is a game that's been taking the Souls-like community by storm very recently because they released some gameplay of a boss fight and it actually looks really good. This looks like a very smooth and satisfying Souls-like that'll offer not only challenge but adrenaline as well. Now this is coming from a Korean developer studio called Shift Up Corporations, and the story of this game does sound interesting. You play as a character named Eve with the goal of freeing Earth from an alien race called the Natives. Now personally, I've been looking for a good sci-fi Souls-like to play, and this one does look really good. The character designs are just off-putting to me. The style the game is going for is something between Devil May Cry and the attack pattern based combat of Souls, and I know there's a lot of people out there that have been looking for something along those lines. It's going to be really interesting to see how this game reviews, and the fact that it is a PS5 exclusive can mean a number of things, but I do think there's a lot of potential with this one. Graphically, it looks amazing, and the setting does look creative for a Souls-like. This is one to keep your eye on for sure. Before we get to the final one on the list, I want to have an honorable mention. Probably the most true to form Souls-like on this list is Enotria: The Last Song. Now this game wears its inspiration on its sleeve and will take the player on a journey through Italian folklore with an emphasis on the main character wearing masks. These masks will change the player's abilities with various skill trees that the player can choose abilities from. I really like the concept of this game and I think the world looks beautiful. However, from video alone, I think the gameplay still has a ways to go. It does look fairly stiff, but I do think with the game's more cartoony art style, it could get away being a little rough around the edges, and it wouldn't break immersion as much. Now what's interesting is that this game is holding a closed beta test pretty soon, so I imagine they'll get a lot of feedback from the players. And they were specifically looking for Souls players, which I think is by far the best thing for them to do. This game is in development by an indie studio named Jayama Games, and although they don't have a release date for it yet, it is labeled to come out sometime in spring 2024. So this is one to keep on your mind as well. And the final one on the list, probably no surprise to anybody, is Black Myth Wukong. I feel like we've been talking about this game forever, and it's kind of become this enigma that feels like it's never actually going to be a real game, but it is, and people have played it, and those people have said the game is awesome. Now, in case you don't know what Black Myth Wukong is, it's an action-adventure game with many Sekiro and Souls-like elements, based on the 16th century novel Journey to the West. You play as the Destined One, out to complete your legend and discover the destiny of Wukong. Now there's a lot to say about this game. Much like Sekiro, your character has only one weapon for the whole game, but through unlocking powers and new abilities by defeating large bosses, you're able to creatively tackle the challenges ahead, oftentimes very stylistically. From the people that got to get hands-on with the game, they were baffled at how well this game held up. Like we mentioned with a few others on this list that look almost too good to be true, Black Myth Wukong was one of the cases where it looks good and plays good. Black Myth Wukong really has the potential to be the breakout hit of 2024. I remember back when it was announced in 2018, everyone was watching the trailer of this game. So if the studio at Game Science can carry that momentum and live up to all the hype with the final release, then we are going to have an incredible journey on our hands. I'm going to be watching this game very closely leading up to August 20th, and I highly recommend you do the same. But those are 6 technically new Souls-likes that you should be looking forward to in 2024. 2023 was an incredible year for Souls-likes, and it's going to be very, very hard to top. But we do have some strong contenders coming up within the next year. So y'all let me know down in the comment section below which one of these games caught your attention the most, and are there other Souls-likes that I didn't mention here? Either way though, if you enjoyed today's video, be sure to leave a like on it and subscribe if you're new around here. But with all that, I will catch you in the next one.